This is the Plein Air Podcast with Eric Rhoads, publisher and founder of Plein Air Magazine. In the Plein Air Podcast, we cover the world of outdoor painting. Called Plein Air, the French coined the term, which means open air or outdoors. The French pronounce it Plein Air. Others say Plein Air. No matter how you say it, there is a huge movement of artists around the world who are going outdoors to paint. And this show is about that movement. Now, here's your host, author, publisher, and painter, Eric Rhoads.
Well, it's working. All right. Nod your head if you can hear me. I'd like to introduce to you our three panelists. Cherie Dawn Haas is the editor of Plein Air Live, our weekly newsletter. She's also the editor of Plein Air did I say Plein Air Live? I did. It's Plein Air Today. Too many Plein Air things. Plein Air Today, Fine Art Today, and Realism Today. So she's very busy. Next, can you say hi to everybody so they can see you?
Sure. Thanks, Eric. Hi, everybody.
And Cherie is in Kentucky. She lives on a farm, and her vineyards froze. Is that right?
Well, they have frozen in the past. This year, they caught on fire.
Oh, they caught on fire. That's what it was. I didn't know vineyards could catch on fire. Next, we have Anne Brown. Anne Brown is the associate publisher. She basically runs things, and she's responsible for all things related to advertising and marketing for artists. Anne, would you say hello?
Hello, everyone. This is so exciting. I tried to go through all 14 pages to see you all, and those of you are looking really good that I got a chance to see. Please ask questions. That's what we're here for.
In the chat, absolutely. And if we have time, we'll open it up. We're also on Facebook Live. And so hello, everybody. Next, we have Kelly Kane, who we're very proud to say is the editor-in-chief of Plein Air Magazine. And she's also the editor of American Watercolor, our watercolor newsletter, because she came to us from Watercolor Magazine. How many years now, Kelly? 3?
I was just doing the math before we came on. I think it's close to 3.5 years now.
Yeah. And you're doing a rock star job. Thank you so much. You've really made a lot of changes for the better. And so that's awesome. So what we wanted to do here is to talk about what we're learning. We were on a call the other day and comparing notes about some things that we think will be helpful to you. You can put questions in the chat. They go by real quickly, but we'll kind of watch for them. But what I'd like to do first, before we kind of open up to the panel, is I want to go through just briefly, this won't take too long, but a little brief agenda and also some research that we've discovered, and also some research that we've done. First off, what we're going to talk about today is some of the research, the impacts, positive and negative, of COVID, and as it relates to shows, galleries, and individual artists. We're going to talk about the outlook for the Plein Air movement, what you need to be doing now, and your backup plan in case of new lockdowns. First, the research. This is a research study that Sunshine Artists did. It's a magazine for those who do a lot of events and street fairs and things like that. That's not necessarily Plein Air shows, but I thought it was interesting. During COVID, 13% of the people surveyed did not do any virtual shows. They did, of course, no in-person shows. 41% tried 1 or 2 virtual shows, and 46 participated in 3 or more virtual shows. The result is that 70% say the artists say that the virtual show sales had been bad. 24 said it had been so-so, and only 6% said that sales were pretty good. Most said that online shows are more work than they're worth doing, that the rewards are not worth the effort, that using online event sales tools that they employed or they participated in some of the online events, they still had little or no sales. And that what's working for them is that their newsletters and emails communicating with existing customers have helped, but cannot compare to the in-person sales of events. I pulled some quotes from some of the research, said what we miss most is customer interaction and watching customers reacting to their work. The lack of shows has reduced new customers and leads. As you know, we all collect business cards at events, and we get and we sell things, and then we can follow up with those customers and sell them more things. Newsletters and emails with existing customers have helped, but they still don't compare to the in-person sales. And online sales are stronger with previous customers, but overall, we're not very strong. We did a survey of the people who run Plein Air shows, and we asked them a few basic questions. If you run a Plein Air show, will your show go forward in 2021? I was actually surprised to see this, that over 80% say that they will continue to go forward in 2021, but looks like about 18% say their shows will not go forward. And we'll get into that with the panel in a minute and find out why that is. The next thing, if I can get it to move, there we go. If you run a Plein Air show, did you do a virtual show as a replacement this year? And about 85% said they did not. And only a small percentage, about 15%, 18% said they did. We heard some pretty good reports from some of the people who did virtual shows. And again, we'll talk about that. If you run a Plein Air show, were sales lower, equal, or better? Pretty much everybody said they're lower. Some said they're equal. Some said they're better. Nobody said they're much better. Once we're allowed out in person and the virus has passed, do you think attendance will be lower, equal, better, or much better? Pretty much 50% say it's going to be better or much better, which we found very encouraging. 67% better or much better. Now, the other thing, once we're allowed out in person, the virus has passed, do you think sales will be? And whoops, I got double percentage signs there on my slides. I apologize, but 33% said, I think I got that wrong number. It's let's see, 30, 60, 70, about 73% say equal or better. Forgive my typo there. So that's encouraging. Now, the other thing I did is I just wanted to find out what the media was saying, just to kind of get a feel for things. And I was curious about travel and what was going to be happening with travel. And I found some articles and a couple of thoughts here. First off, this person who works or runs Royal Caribbean Cruises says some of the things we thought were going to happen are not happening. They're better than we thought. He said that, specifically pointing to the age of people booking trips. We really thought older people would be more cautious, and it turns out they want to get out of the house too. So I think that's very encouraging news. And I'm sure, of all things that I think a lot of us say we're not going to book, it's a cruise line, because the whole COVID spread kind of began with the cruise lines, if you remember those stories. And so it sounds like they're having some bookings, and they're having some bookings by older people. Jim Cramer at CNBC says it's going to be a boom here in this country, and I don't think people are ready for it. And the boom he was talking about was specifically about a travel boom. He said that the airlines, even though the airlines and the travel industry has been hurting, he said that those stocks are about to soar, because what they're learning is that there's a lot of pent-up desire to travel. No secret. Now, these two quotes: once this is under control, there will be a huge need to travel, not just far away, but local and regional travel. We want to move and reconnect with people, says Samantha Brown, who does a show on PBS. And increased interest in local travel for those who normally go to Greece. New Yorkers will make their way to Nantucket or the Gula Islands instead. And I think that's kind of what I'm hearing too, is that a lot of people are kind of waiting for the international to open up, but they know it might not open up real soon, or they might be fearful that they're going to get stuck in another country if there's another lockdown, but they are planning on traveling throughout the United States. So now we're going to go to the panel discussion. Anne Brown, can you tell me what your thoughts are on what you're seeing in terms of plein air shows?
So I just returned about 2 hours ago from a 2-week camping trip because I had to get out of the house and I needed to start seeing people, which made me feel extremely good. So I guess I'm in that percentage who can't wait to get out and already did. But I think what I'm hearing, particularly from those organizations that are much more aggressive in their marketing, and I don't mind pointing out some of them, like the Laguna Plein Air Painters, they and Olmsted, around the country, there have been a number of very aggressively marketed plein air events that were virtual, with in some cases a component of live, but I think, and they've done well. They've done well financially. They've done well in terms of keeping their membership excited and engaged, and so I believe that plein air events who take that extra effort, and I know that so many plein air event organizers are volunteers, so asking them to make a double commitment, as it were, to do a virtual event of some sort along with a in-person event, if that's possible, takes like sometimes 10 times more because they don't have the technological infrastructure to allow that to just happen. They have to find people to do those things.
Well, and it's by the way, it's enormously expensive to pull that off. As you know, from our own internal situation, we had to pivot to plein air live, which we did shortly after we realized we weren't going to be able to do any live events. And, it takes about 13 people to put that thing together, and maybe more than that. So it's not easy we're in the video business, and so it's easier for us, but even for us, it was a stretch. So it's got to be tough for organizations that are not in that industry.
Yes, but I think one thing a group as excited as you all are to get on tonight and listen, that you're in the perfect position to volunteer with whatever organization you belong to, or organizations multiple, but even in your own local community, helping, we all want to be able to just get out there and paint. But the reality is that the back end of this has got to be just as much a part of your sphere of thinking as the actual painting. It's just like marketing your own self is just as important as painting. There's so many other aspects besides the part that's gratifying, the painting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'd like to hear what Kelly and Cherie have to say.
Yeah, I want to add on to what Anne said. I think, a lot of the events were worried, and I think we were all worried is, if you cancel completely for a year, you do sort of lose that momentum and that kind of connection that you have with the community where you hold these events. And so I think that was a big worry. And I think it's what drove a lot of events to do at least some sort of virtual event or some hybrid of some in person, some virtual. And I think those events that did well with it had to really get creative, and doing drive-by art displays, or, they took their competitions and put them on Zoom and made it online, and then did their auctions and sales online, to whatever degree of effectiveness. But there was a lot of creative thinking going on. And I think, the events that I've talked to, even those that are moving towards getting back to mostly live for this year, even though, maybe in smaller venues, still with safety precautions. I think that a lot of events have learned, that it's good to be that creative and that diversified in their thinking about how they're engaging their audience and their communities and their artists, and that they've learned and they're going to start incorporating some of those things going forward even. So I think it's been an interesting time. I think those events that, did well are looking forward to, coming back strong. So I'm encouraged. I'm hopeful and encouraged.
Cherie.
So I agree with Anne and Kelly too, with everything that they've said. And I think, we can look at some of the silver linings, and that's that in this past year, we've figured out new ways to communicate with each other and to create new bonds that we would have never had without, the challenges that we had to face. So I think that it'll be interesting to see if some of these continue, like the Zoom meetings and the Zoom critiques and the Zoom shows and things like that, because I think it just gives us more opportunity to connect with people that we otherwise would miss,
I think to that point, we made a conscious decision here at Streamline that some of these events that we've been doing online, like Plein Air Live, Realism Live, just announced Pastel Live, and what am I missing? Watercolor Live. We're going to continue to do those in spite of the fact that we'll do our live conventions again as soon as we are allowed. We had to cancel our Plein Air convention for May because it was just too soon. And it looks like we're likely to have to still cancel our fall FACE conference, though we don't have confirmation on that. But we do think that things will start changing rapidly as we see more people getting out. And so I think that a lot of these things will continue no matter what. We learned from people, some of you may be even watching, we learned from people who said things to us like, my situation, I just could never go to something live like the Plein Air convention because I'm caring for someone. I've got family members to take care of it. It's too expensive to spend, a few $1,000s on hotel and airfare and so on. And so we kind of took that as a clue that things will continue to go on. And so we'll be curious about how that works out. I can tell you in my own case, something changed after being at home for a year. And though I think all of us were working harder in our particular case, and probably in most of your cases, I'm more reluctant to get on an airplane than I have been for a while. Not so much because of the safety concerns, but because I've just really enjoyed not being on an airplane 40 weeks a year. And so I think that when someone offers up a virtual event, before I would, I'd pay a couple $1,000s to go to an event. I'd get on an airplane. I'd buy a hotel room. I'd stay there for 3 or 4 days, sometimes just to see 1 or 2 or 3 speakers. And now I'm hoping that those events will continue virtually because I'm less likely to get on an airplane for all of them. There's some of them I'm just going to say, no matter what, I'm going. Certainly our own events I'm going, but the idea is that I'd much rather be able to work from my office and, tune in to the speakers that I want to hear. And for me, it's worth spending the price of the conference to learn what I need to learn from the right people. So, Anne, I'm curious again, let's kind of go back to you because there's been some casualties in all of this. Tell me about the casualties, and are there plein air shows that just will never return? And talk to me about the art gallery world.
Well, I think there's always going to be, unfortunately, some fallout to anything that's as pandemic as and nationwide, well, global as this is. And so, yes, there will be plein air events, certainly, that aren't going to go forward. But on the other hand, on that note, I'm hearing, because we try to, whenever we can, feed these stories to Kelly and Cherie about organizations that are kind of cropping up almost organically in your community, both local and regional, people painting together because they feel comfortable being out on a trail, at a park, whatever, with 5 or 6 other painters, or even 10 or 12 or whatever. And so maybe some organically grown plein air events will come from that. I know in Utah, the Moab plein air event, which is probably in its, 20th year or so, started that way. And it was just an organic thing of a group of artists, as many events have started that way. So maybe with the fallout of some, they'll become more new ones, lots of new ones throughout the country. Galleries are a different situation. For those of you that are in galleries, I'm sure that at least one, if you have 3 galleries, I'm sure one no longer exists. The fallout of galleries is huge, but they're primarily very long-standing brick and mortar galleries, 40 years old, 50 years old, in major urban areas, in Chicago, in New York, where people have not been able to come in and actually do any in-person purchasing of art. And those galleries have done so well as brick and mortar, they haven't wanted to, just like some events, move into the virtual world. But the galleries that either have the resources or have enough young people who are technologically astute working with them have had fabulous years. I've talked to so many galleries, as have other people on our team, that had the best year they've ever had in 2020, because they moved very quickly into a virtual realm and have created fascinating ways to explain who their artists are, what they're doing virtual workshops, whatever. And those galleries, even galleries that have started new in 2020, which I think takes a lot of guts, but people have done it. There is definitely going to be a change. We've heard about concierge galleries where they will represent your work, but take it out to the homes rather than anticipating someone's going to come to their gallery. There's just a lot of new innovative ways that galleries are working.
I just want to expand on that, if I might. If you look at the idea of pivoting, in our case, we pivoted. We thought very much like we were going to be out of business. These people all saw their salaries decrease. We saw people get laid off, and we were really scared, honestly. We pivoted and came up with this other idea and went full in, and the team recovered, and we're not back to normal, but we're stronger than we were. And in 2008, when we had the big recession, there was 2 things that were happening. It was a perfect storm. It was kind of the convergence of a recession plus the beginnings of where online selling was taking place a lot more than it ever had. And there were probably 200, 300, 400 galleries that went out of business in that period of time because they didn't pivot. They said, we like the way we do things, and we're Blockbuster, and we're not going to change. Meanwhile, Netflix came along and changed everything. There was a gallery in Fredericksburg, Texas. I was just there this weekend, and this gallery started up right at the beginning of the recession, and I questioned him about that because they became very successful very fast. And he said he had studied these things because he was a consultant, and he said that when to zig when everybody else zags. He said, during a recession, everybody does the stupidest thing possible, which is they stop communicating to their customers. They, they stopped doing the things that made them great. They stopped doing the shows, the cocktail parties. They stopped advertising. They stopped getting out there, and then they were out of sight, out of mind. Meanwhile, he came along and doubled down on his advertising, started doing more things, and he took 10, 15, 20% of the customers away from his 5 or 6 top competitors and became very successful overnight. And this is kind of a similar situation, even though this is not a recession-based thing, it's a COVID-based thing. We're seeing kind of similar situations. The people who are surviving are the ones who pivoted. They said, I have to get more aggressive with my marketing, not less aggressive. And as Anne said, we've heard from galleries and artists who have had the best year they've ever had in their history. And I can tell you that pretty much every other day throughout the entire COVID time, because I talk to lots of artists, as we all do, one artist would tell me he or she is having the best year they've ever had, the other worst year they've ever had. And probably the difference is that the one just got overly aggressive and just said, I can't afford to die. I'm just going to work like crazy on it. And maybe the other one just didn't do that. I can't be sure about that. Kelly, Cherie, any thoughts?
I was thinking about the individuals. We talked a lot about plein air events, and galleries have all had to pivot, is the word we've been using, and kind of innovative in how they're staying connected to their customers and their communities. And I think the artists who have fared the best, done the same, they're the ones who are, everybody's been spending a lot more time in their studio and painting. But these are the artists who have also gotten really aggressive on Instagram and made sure that they're always posting new work and keeping their work out in front of their customers, their collectors, and even just, art-loving people who are on Instagram, making sure that their website is up to date and engaging and in really good shape. So kind of taking care of all those things. And I'm watching the art chat, and a lot of people are talking about, instructors who have started to do virtual workshops and things in place of in-person. So I think that is the lesson kind of across the board, is that the people and the events and the galleries that have done well are the ones who have put in the work, got creative, and stayed engaged.
And you said something the other day when we were preparing for this. You said something the other day about what you're finding in terms of websites.
So my biggest beef in life, really, because
In life?
Well, okay, right this moment. Besides the puppy that we have, what I think all of us who've been in the art business long enough to have been watching websites evolve over 30 some years at least, maybe longer, but then I've lost track of the last 20. I think my biggest beef is how people project themselves on their websites. Every single collector I know, whether they're buying a $1,000 painting or $1 million painting, there is so much research that goes into what someone purchases. And if they're standing in a gallery, if they're standing at a live art show, if they're just perusing the web looking for something, if they get on your website, you literally have 10 seconds. Think about how long 10 seconds is. Really short. You have 10 seconds to tell them about you. And if you knew how atrociously ugly, I would say 50% of the websites I look at they're out of date. They don't have the very best work that the artist does on the home page. They don't change it regularly. They don't update, the awards and exhibits and organizations they belong to, et cetera, et cetera. So I could go on forever.
Well, one more thing related to that is they don't mobile optimize. 80 to 90% now of viewing is taking place on a cell phone. And a lot of people are, you have to kind of move your finger around to see things. you're going to leave.
But in this next issue of Plein Air, Cherie's writing an article about website and how you can take care of your own websites. But what I always suggest to artists, and we all do this, is that everyone lives near a high school. Everyone that I am aware of, and I just came through some really very few people on the face of the earth that you could see places, but everybody has a high school and they all have kids who are super smart and need the encouragement of creating. Hire somebody out of the high school and have them help you with your website. If you're not savvy on your computer, take advantage of the fact that we have a huge population of young people who are 10 times more brilliant than anybody that I know on the computer. And it's a win-win, but it's so important. It's so important.
You know, part of that issue, some people have great website tools. You know, there are a lot of companies that make website tools and make it easy for you to do it, but they're still ignoring. So in some cases, you need to build something new. You need to find somebody who's tech savvy or use a website service. But you got to pay attention to these things. First off, you think that Google will find you. You know, somebody contacted me a couple of years ago, and they said, you know, I spent all this money and I put up a website. I'm sitting here waiting, and I haven't had any customers or any sales. Well, I went to the website and found a lot of problems. But the first problem is if you don't change your website pretty frequently, Google will ignore you because Google's looking for fresh content. And if you just take the same content all the time and just leave it up, they're just going to skip right over you. You're going to end up 30 or 40 down on the page rather than number 1 or 2. So you need to look for ways to refresh your content and always be out there. So, Kelly, any thoughts on this?
Well,
because you're an editor, you're looking at websites all the time.
Yeah, you know, talking about pet peeves, and mine is, and while we're talking about websites, is please put your contact information on your website, make it easy to find. So that's what has been going through my head, you know, as an editor, when I'm looking for people to feature and I see a great piece of art and then I go to their website and can't figure out how to contact them, or you know, they've got one of those forms but don't ever check it and I never hear back from them. It's a real missed opportunity. So
yeah,
I'll add that.
Cherie, any thoughts? You guys just jump in. I don't have to call you out every time.
Oh, that's fine. I'm interested in hearing what everyone else has to say too. I have too many thoughts about websites. In fact, when Kelly and I talked about this article that's coming out, she gave me a word count, and I think I quadrupled it by the time I finished putting everything down. But it doesn't have to be too complicated. So, and I'd like to back up just a little bit. Eric, you used the phrase doubling down, how people had doubled down over the past year. And if I can, I'd just like to remind people that it's not too late to do that at this point too. So even if you had sort of a slow year, or you didn't go, above and beyond like some people did, because we all handle this so differently. It's not too late to start now, because I really am optimistic about the near future, even for artists and creatives. And so there are lots of ways to learn how to, just step up the game a little bit and just stay inspired and motivated.
My dad always says it only takes 90 days to change the trajectory of your life or your business. 90 days. And, I was reading about Elon Musk, and he talked about he wanted to learn something, and he would just spend 90 days doing nothing but learning that one thing. And in 90 days, he could become proficient. When I was on vacation a couple of weeks ago, I wanted to learn more about a couple of different things. One of them was Instagram marketing. One of them was YouTube marketing. And I read 4 books. I took an online course. I'm not an expert, but I'm a whole lot more informed now than I was. And so those are things that you can do and figure out, where do you need to go and what what should I be doing? I want to shift gears here because I don't want to keep everybody on too long. But what is this? What is the future of the plein air movement?
Well, I obviously I'm the chatty one here, but I think one thing I'm seeing is a lot more museums getting into plein air because they've had the worst year in the history of any museum, no matter how creative they were. It was a very sad year. 2020 was a very sad year for museums. And so we've had a number of new museums, new events come out because the museums are seeing them as a fundraising situation for them. So like the Oceanside Museum in California is doing their first plein air event. I think that's something that is really exciting, particularly those events that are open, that anybody can go to and paint in, which is fabulous, whether you're a beginner or you're a 20-year seasoned plein air event participant. Going to events when you can go to an event is such a great experience because you'll learn from everybody around you. So whenever you have the ability to go to an event that's open, I think that's very important. And belonging to
a good way to learn what's going on too.
Right, absolutely.
And
And organizations. That's the only other thing I want to say. Join organizations.
Yeah. I was just going to add, a lot of those events, even though they're invitationals, they'll have some sort of quick paint or quick draw element. And a lot of it's open to anyone to join in. You're painting right along with kind of the big dogs at the events. And like Eric said, you can really learn a lot and it's great exposure. And I was just talking to Kathy Hoke with Door County, and at least at their event, I think it's their winner of their quick paint gets an automatic invitation to the event for the next year. So it's a great experience. And I think that you're right, Anne. I think getting involved locally and, just kind of getting out there. I think that a lot of people who may have been too intimidated to do it before, everybody's looking for a chance to get out and to reconnect and, to have that companionship. So I think it could be a real boom year, whether or not you're at that level that you're getting invited to these invitations, get involved with them because there's lots of opportunities to be involved with those events, big and small, locally and larger. So
if somebody were watching now and they said, I'm a museum or I'm a local charity or city organization or something, and I want to start a plein air event, where do you begin? How do you do that? Anne, you're chatty.
Well, I started the Zion National Park plein air event now 10 years ago, I think, or maybe 11, or I don't remember. Anyway, well, actually it was longer than that. Why age myself? Anyway, I think what you need is just a couple of people who are willing to put the time in, get a grant from your tourism bureau, whether it's local, state, regional, whatever. Because you bring in collectors, that means you bring in heads in beds, as they say. So, you may take a year to get enough going that you can get actual funding. But, the idea of just getting a group together, painting together, and then having that evolve into an event, and starting out as an open event where anyone can come and paint with you is certainly going to grow your number of people that participate. And then it just kind of
I've seen events get really, really bad reputations very fast because of the quality of the art, in the sense that and don't take this wrong, please, because I'm sure somebody will be offended by this, but the idea that we want to engage and make sure we support our local arts community. And sometimes they're jurying in people who really shouldn't be juried in. And we want to be inclusive. We want everybody to be able to participate. Yet, how do you walk that fine line? Because you want to become known as having really good people, so people will come back year after year. I remember watching an event. I won't say which one, but watching an event going from having a reputation as a premier event, dropping down to having a very poor reputation in about 2 years' time, because they shifted their thinking and they lowered their quality standards.
Well, I think, one of the easiest ways down the road to create an event that's successful is to have an open event, a juried portion, an invitational portion. Those are the three major areas of most events. And if you keep those always excelling in terms of the people in it, in your I just read somebody wrote gerrymandering, and I believe that it's really important to have a variety of jurors, that you combine collectors and artists, and you're going to have favoritism no matter what, but if you have a diverse committee, and I know a lot of the people on our sales team have been, well, and Kelly and Cherie for sure, have been on selection committees where there is obviously a lot of it can be blind. It doesn't have to have names on paintings. There's a whole variety of ways to get away from gerrymandering, but have
the people on your team can walk people through, right? All your people are trained in how to.
Absolutely. Yeah. They've all been involved in this in one capacity or another, but also it's important to have an open part of any plein air event, because the only way a person is going to excel in the plein air movement as a professional artist, certainly, is to go through that process of painting in front of people, having people say, "Oh, your work is shit." It's happened to me. It just happens. And, that's how you survive in the plein air event world. You have to be able to take criticism. You have to be able to take rejection, because on the flip side, there's always going to be somebody who just loves what you do, and people who will give you appropriate critique. It's such a extraordinary experience.
My mother loved all my paintings. Plein air, boom or bust, if you had to say, what's the next 12 months look like? Cherie, boom or bust?
100%. I believe it's going to be a boom. And I think that's the case no matter where you are. I've been watching everybody's comments come through, and everybody's experiences are a little bit different based on what they can do at this time and things like that. But I think people are going to make it work, even if it's on a micro local level. I think it's gonna do really well for everyone, as long as we stay motivated, stay educated, and just help each other get through this. It's going to be great.
Kelly?
Boom. No question.
Anne?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I have to tell you all, who we are very thankful, who read our magazines and read our newsletters and do all the participatory events, etc. I can see, and I've been with the company 10 years, and I can see how, yeah, really. And look at what, did you see that long blonde haired person? And now look what happened to me. But it's so exciting when I I just got an email from somebody on the Oregon coast who there's about 30 of them that get together at various places along the Oregon coast every year. And it's a very loosely organized, very informal situation. And they couldn't do it last year. Well, a couple of them did, but as a group, very informal. It's so exciting to hear from this person that they're getting together and planning this summer trips in a little different fashion than they have, but everybody wants to get out and paint, and it's definitely a boom.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you all say that. I think I think the same thing is happening. First off, we have we all have this desire to get out, not just painters, all of us, everybody, we just want to get out. But the thing that's been missing is that ability to hang with other people. I mentioned I was in Fredericksburg, Texas over the weekend. Lori and I took our motorhome down and camped out for the weekend. And I was driving out through the hills, and there was this open air bar, and there had to be 20,000 people there. I kid you not. I mean, it was massive. Some were wearing masks and some were not, but they were like, well, we're tired of this. We're going to party. And when they were going to be with other people. And I was a little shocked to see it and a little reluctant to go in myself, and I did not. But the idea is that I think we're all really ready. And as long as we're getting to the point where we feel secure and safe, we're going forward with our European fine art collectors trip. We're going forward with our Russia trip. We're going forward with the Adirondack event in the Fall Color Week. But we're not going forward with Plein Air because May was just too soon to know whether or not it was going to be safe. And we're having some issues, even about in the state we're in with whether or not we can hold the face conference. But I think by next year, assuming this thing doesn't come back and haunt us again, I think, everything's going to be booming. I believe that those of you who do workshops or hold workshops, you're going to be packed. And I'm hearing from people who say, I'm just going to do everything. I saved a lot of money because we weren't eating out, we weren't traveling. So some people got hit financially. Some people have extra expendable income. And I think that for the next 2 or 3 years, our travel guy told us that, we're doing a trip to Russia in September, which is sold out. And he said that the word got out that the Russian border was opening April 15th, first to Africa, of all things. And 1 million trips were booked from Africa into Russia. 1 million trips in about a 3 or 4 day time. So I think that this is just going to boom. We're told that the airlines are going to get really expensive to try to make up for some of the losses. But people will do it anyway because they want to get out. So I think if you have workshops, you're going to be successful, but you got to make sure people know about them. And I think that the Plein Air events, those that were on ice, I think if you bring them back, you're going to have good success. And I think those who closed them down permanently need to take a second look at that and say, can we bring it back and can we make it better? And I think that will have a huge impact. So the other thing that I think is important, and Anne and I kind of had this dialogue, well, we all did the other day, and that is that everything is about elevating your quality. Everything's about getting better. If you're participating in anything as a professional, whether it's participating in an outdoor event or a paint along, or you're going to a higher level, it's got to be about making sure that you're the best you can possibly be, because what you're up against is there are a lot of painters, probably yourself included, who got more brush time in the last year than they've gotten in the last 5 years combined. I've had more painters tell me they had breakthroughs. CW Mundy and I have been communicating because he's on Plein Air Live. He had major breakthroughs, the stuff he's sending me, and we all know he was already a master. but he's having major breakthroughs because he's spent so much time, because you don't have the temptation to go out and do other things. So your competition, if you look at it as competition, is stronger, and you need to be looking for ways that you can develop yourself and get stronger. Who wants to talk about that? Because I know that editors, you're always running against this, and you have strong feelings about it as well.
I can go first this time. We'll mix it up. One of the ways that I'd like to share this, if you're not signed up yet for the Plein Air Today newsletter, that's actually, like, if I don't say so myself, it's a pretty darn good resource for plein air painting tips and instruction and step-by-step demos and
Shows.
freebies, excerpts, all kinds of things. I've really tried to pepper it with definitive how-to, so that when you read it, you walk away with something that you can apply. I would say, take advantage of the resources that are available to you, because that's why we do what we do, and we love to do it. So
Somebody asked how you sign up for the newsletter, Cherie.
Oh yeah, thanks for asking. You can go to outdoorpainter.com, and you'll see a link there for the Plein Air Today newsletter. Thank you.
Kelly?
Well, I think, like you said, a lot of artists have been spending a lot more time in their studios over the past 12 months. And so, presumably they've gotten better, and they've got a whole slew of work that is sitting there that they need to share. And, I hope that they're doing that through their social media channels, and, getting in touch with Anne, and, and let Cherie and I know, what's been going on. Who are the artists that are exciting you, or what have you learned over the past 12 months? Because those are great stories.
There is so much going on right now, with all the different organizations that you can belong to, which you can learn about through both the magazine and the newsletters. The one thing that's really nice when you're reading an article is that both Cherie and Kelly always note, like, what kind of organizations these artists belong to, and look into those. A lot of them are juried memberships, but if you don't apply, you won't get accepted. And and that goes for shows too. A lot of times I think we're hard on ourselves in terms of, oh, I can't apply to that show, I'm not good enough. Well, so frequently shows will give you feedback, whether you're accepted or denied. There's nothing wrong with asking, well, why? And a lot of organizations have different levels of membership, so you can start out and maybe as an affiliate, but you can, you'll rise to different levels, signature, blah, blah, whatever the different levels are. But it's important that you put yourself out there, because let's face it, you paint in a vacuum, and that's the best part about plein air, is getting out and painting with other people.
So I've had people say I didn't come to the plein air convention because I didn't think I was good enough, because they were embarrassed to paint in front of other people, probably not understanding that, we have mentors there to work with everybody. Do you want to open it up to a couple questions before we move on? I've got a couple other things I'm going to share with people before we go, but first off, why don't we do a round robin? Any final thoughts of anything else that we maybe should have talked about?
The only thing I was going to do is answer someone's question about what is mobilization. That means you can read it on your cell phone, because if your website is not mobilized, which with a lot of better easier to use website templates, it would automatically mobilize it. But that's when you can always tell if you get on your phone, look at a website, and you can't see everything, it is not mobilized.
Yeah. Well, all of those things are really important. You gotta, if you're going to be in the game, be in the game. The other thing I want to just mention to people is I teach art marketing at the Plein Air convention. I don't do it anywhere else other than, we have some videos and things. And one of the key principles that I teach, which I think is really important, there's a really, really important recent example. And that is that oftentimes we think that we have one thing that will be our marketing channel. And whatever that one thing is, it's just one thing. You might be thinking that one thing is Facebook, or that one thing is Instagram, or or advertising, or doing shows, or otherwise. And yet it's really important not to be completely reliant on one thing. And this is kind of what got some of the galleries in trouble, is because they kind of operated in, this is how we do things. This is the one way we market ourselves, or we're relying on people walking in the door. Well, that one thing stopped instantly with COVID. And so a lot of people have figured out that they have to be even more aggressive. But there was a recent example. Apple just changed all their privacy settings. And there's a massive amount of Facebook marketing that used to get through to people that no longer gets through to people, because this one massive change, which has resulted in a huge reduction in spend for Facebook. And it's also resulted in thousands and thousands of companies who can't get through to people they used to be able to get through to. They can still get through to people on Androids, and some of the things still get through on certain social media ads, but some of the retargeting and other things do not. So you want to make sure that you have multiple ways of approaching your audience and staying visible. These two women, Cherie and Kelly, I guarantee you that every single week they're sweating bullets over what story am I going to come up with for this newsletter or for these pages of the magazine. You have to not just assume that they're going to find you. Some of the best articles that we've written have been somebody who out of the blue said, hey, by the way, did you know that I'm riding a bicycle around the world and I'm going to stop and paint every 24 miles? Those make great stories, and we don't know about them unless you tell us about them. So comments on that?
I'm going to pop my.
I have to come in because each of you out there has someone that works with you or should be working with you. If you're interested in marketing yourselves, we have a team of incredible people around the country that work with people at all levels of their career to help them market themselves better. And if you don't know the person that you work with, then you can email me. Just because my phone number's in the magazine, please don't call me because I get too many phone calls. But email me. It's abrown, so simple, at streamlinepublishing.com. And I will put you in touch with the right person on our team to work with you.
Putting it in so people can have it. Okay, well, I think I'm going to share a couple of things in a minute, but I think that we really do have a big boom ahead, and I think that this is the time to take advantage of it. If COVID returns, it'll be different this time. First off, I think in some places, people are just not going to allow themselves to be locked down like they were before. I certainly know that's true in the two states that I spend a lot of time in, which are Texas and Florida, both of which are operating pretty much like normal. And in Texas, the cases are going down, not up. If there is a lockdown, the thing that's really critical is to know that, first off, keep some cash handy so that you can make it through it, right? And that means if you're a gallery, try to keep some cash handy so that maybe you have to cut your expenses a little bit, but focus, put your time and energy into promotion, because we heard from so many people who said, we sold art. People randomly found us because they were looking at an ad in the magazine or a website or an Instagram page or something else. And people were staring at their walls and were sick of staring at their walls and started painting their walls and making changes in their furniture and putting up paintings. And so you want to make sure that you look for an opportunity to stay visible. First off, make sure that you have a good relationship and an ongoing with your existing customer base, meaning people who have bought paintings from you in the past. If you're selling paintings, some of you are not, and make sure you have regular frequency of communication, newsletters and other things. And by the way, it's okay to ask for help. I mean, we said, we're almost out of business. When we were really scared, I mentioned before, when we first started this, our advertising dropped by 50%. Our art shows, our live shows dropped by 100%. Anne came up with something and ended up getting 250,000 readers in Fine Art Connoisseur. And we had the biggest issue in the history of our however many years, 14, 15 years. And so stay visible, keep yourself out there and be ready, because I think you want to, a lot of you have got inventory because you painted a lot. Be ready for that. Get that stuff framed up and get ready to take it to some galleries, some shows. I think things are going to explode. Kelly, real quickly, 30 seconds on the anniversary, because you've just done an anniversary issue. Yeah,
well, we're celebrating all year because we figure we all need something to celebrate, don't we? Yeah. So it's the 10-year anniversary. And as we've tried to explain a couple of times, it's sort of like 10 years plus 2 because the magazine went away for a couple of years, and then it's been back. And we've just really been having a great time. I've been dipping into the archives and checking in with some of those artists who appeared in those first issues to see what they're doing now. And in the next issue that I'm working on now, we're going to talk to 10 of the top plein air painters from around the world. So we're really playing with the 10 idea and having a great time. And it's really brought out some really cool stories. So I hope everybody's been enjoying it.
Anne and Kelly and Cherie, thank you for being on today. Hopefully you will know there's a boom ahead, and it's an exciting time. I think the plein air movement will remain strong. And, the thing that's really important about this movement is that we have to keep bringing people in. You each have a responsibility to teach other people to, if somebody stops you on the street and they wonder what you're doing, tell them what you're doing and encourage them that they can do it. Maybe even give them a quick little mini lesson. Tell them where they can learn, because we need to bring more people in. We need to bring more younger people in as well, and spread the word, because 20 years ago, this movement didn't really exist. There were just very few events and very few people doing this. And today, the Plein Air Podcast has had over 1 million downloads. Plein Air Magazine has been #1 for a few years now at Barnes & Noble, #1 art magazine in America, and that's because of this plein air movement. So let's keep it strong, keep it going. And thank you all for your time. And thank you, Cherie and Kelly and Anne. And thank you for tuning in tonight.
This has been the Plein Air Podcast with Plein Air Magazine's Eric Rhoads. You can help spread the word about plein air painting by sharing this podcast with your friends. And you can leave a review or subscribe on iTunes so it comes to you every week. And you can even reach Eric by email, eric@pleinairmagazine.com. Be sure to pick up our free ebook, 240 plein air painting tips by some of America's top painters. It's free at pleinairtips.com. Tune in next week for more great interviews. Thanks for listening.